You are watching the press preview. First look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. Coming up, we'll see what's making the headlines with the chief leader writer at the Observer, Sonia Sodha, and the political journalist Isabel Oakeshott. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. England's first knockout victory over Germany in 55 years is on the front of the Metro, with the paper proclaiming that the jinx is over. The Sun praises the sterling work of the footballer who scored the first goal, hailing the end of what's described as 55 years of hurt. By George, we did it, says the Daily Mail. The Daily Mirror declares that it's time to dream. The Express says Scotland Yard faces urgent questions over why officers witnessed Professor Chris Whitty being attacked but did not arrest those responsible. The Telegraph says children from the most deprived areas are hit hardest by school self-isolation, and the picture there of Harry Kane at the top. The Eye reports that the Vaccine Task Force is buying up stocks as the NHS prepares for a booster programme in the autumn. And just some breaking news in. We're hearing that Ukraine have won, so they will be the next opponents for England. We're joined to take us through the papers tonight by Sonia Sodha, chief leader writer at The Observer, and political journalist Isabel Oakeshott. Welcome to you both. Your reaction to that, first of all. Sonia, Ukraine, it's to be?
Well, I have to say I didn't watch the whole match because I was preparing for this, but I did have it on in the background, and I saw that goal go in the I think it was first or second minute of extra time, 3 minutes of extra time on the extra time, and Ukraine got the goal in. So they did leave it until the very last minute, but that is great for them, and I think it's probably I think England's prospects against either Ukraine or Sweden are probably quite half decent this Saturday. So it's exciting, looking forward to see what happens then.
And Isabel, starting with the Metro, the jinx, it's all over. Can they go all the way?
Well, here's hoping. I mean, every paper tomorrow covers this story, of course, on the front pages with huge degrees of enthusiasm. And I'm no great football fan, but I think all of us can join in and feel seriously excited by the result this evening, and just a little bit optimistic, maybe.
Yes, I mean, a lot of them emphasising this end of the 55-year curse, and that's what many were saying seemed to be following England players around. But many of the players are simply too young to be a part of that, though, aren't they, Sonia? So it's a different era.
It's totally a different era, and I think obviously everyone who supports England is absolutely delighted tonight. It was a really good match to watch, but I think there's probably some people who are a bit surprised at the result as well. I guess it's just a very sort of pleasant surprise. Germany, I think, were probably thought to be the stronger team going into it, but England were the ones who went and scored two goals and made the score 2-0. You can probably tell I'm not that expert at football, so my punditry is rather lacking here.
Isabel's giggling at you. Let's test her, shall we? Many saying that Germany wasn't the team of old that perhaps we should fear, that it was a different ranking in terms of player quality that played against England tonight.
If you're asking me for my expertise on that, you are totally asking the wrong person. I am not even going to position myself here as even a mediocre football correspondent. Sonia, I was super impressed with your fluency on this, and I think back to Sonia on that one.
It's not tennis. Back and forth. Well, let's talk in general, though, about how the newspapers are covering. I mean, it is just totally jubilant, isn't it? Every single paper, without fail, I think. Sonia?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's just a massive deal, isn't it, when your national team gets through its first kind of knockout match of the tournament. And, as I said, England's going to a quarter on Saturday, where it's got a fairly decent chance. So I just think, with everything that's been going on at the moment, when we look at COVID, infection rates are ticking up again. It's just absolutely brilliant to have something to celebrate over the summer. So, I think that's, that is the tone in which every paper's covered it.
Yeah, and Isabel, the Sun winning, I think, with the puns. 55 years of hurt never stopped us. Raheeming. Do you groan?
I thought that was a little bit lame, but there are some really fantastic images in tomorrow's papers, including lovely pictures of Kate Middleton and the number of royals looking really great and enthusiastic, as they should, and also scenes of utter jubilation on the streets, which are bound to sort of reopen the debate about the extent to which lockdown restrictions are still meaningful in terms of public gatherings. Extraordinary scenes in central London, and I'm sure up and down the country, of people celebrating and not really paying any attention, of course, to social distancing.
Yeah, you mentioned the royals, and the Mail has a lovely picture of Prince George on the front there, looking very smart in his suit and tie, along with the fans, and that picture of Harry Kane also there. And it was great to see the royals. We saw Prince William punching the air in absolute delight, didn't we? Did you see that, Sonia?
Yeah, I did. I guess, it's one of those things that everyone can get involved in, really. Whether you're a royal or, I suppose whether you're not. It's just. And what's interesting is actually Wimbledon also kicked off today. So there was as you can see, my commentary is struggling.
I feel like this is.
Sorry, go ahead, Isabel.
Like this is some kind of parody of failed commentators as they get asked to talk about things that are totally outside their comfort zone. Can we move on at any point and agree that the football's fab, and Sonia and I are just not the people to be talking about this?
We will take you out of your misery and move on. It's on every single paper, so we kind of had to talk about it. Let's move on to the Eye, and jabs stockpile to help UK live with COVID-19. Sonia, take us into this story.
So this is the Eye reporting what's looking forward to the vaccine programme, with what's going to be happening over the summer and into the autumn, and it talks about how the government is stockpiling a large number of jabs looking forward to the autumn, because we're all expecting there to be a booster vaccination programme. And in fact, just this week, the government announced that it was going to be running a booster trial. It asked for people who've had two AstraZeneca jabs to register on the NHS website if they're interested in taking part in the trial, and those people will be getting a third booster jab, a different jab, so Pfizer or Moderna, and that will be tested in time for autumn rollout. So I think it's very heartening to see that, as you'd expect, plans are being made for the autumn. The testing is going on. I expect that from what we know so far, the emerging evidence about mix and match strategies, it suggests that actually mixing different types of vaccine, so the adenovirus vaccine, which is the AstraZeneca vaccine, with mRNA vaccines like Pfizer and Moderna, can boost immunity even further. So I expect that's what we're going to be seeing from the government and from the vaccine programme this autumn.
Yeah, Isabel, one of the things the article is pointing out is that they're saying the Transport Secretary is downplaying hopes that fully vaccinated holidaymakers will be able to travel quarantine-free to amber list countries. That will be a bit of a blow to people, because I think many people are counting on that, because the government had heavily hinted that that would be the way forward.
Well, I mean, I think if they are counting on it, they're being pretty foolish, because unfortunately, it's not just up to us what we say. What we're seeing is quite chaotic scenes amongst Europe's political leaders about what their policy is going to be on this. And the Germans pushing for the whole of Europe to ask us to quarantine when we arrive, whether we've had 2 vaccines or not. And then other countries saying, no, actually, we really want to welcome the British. We need their holiday money. So I think it's pretty daft, actually, to plan with any type of confidence any holiday on the continent this summer. It's just going to be too uncertain. Even if our own government can decide what they want to do, things seem to be shifting very fast in the countries that we might want to go to.
Yes, you're right. It's how we'll be received by other countries. That is a very important element as well. Let's take a quick look at the Metro, and many people have seen the footage, awful footage, disgraceful footage of Professor Chris Whitty being manhandled by several yobs. The pressure is now on the Met to actually get somebody for it.
Yeah, I think anyone who's sort of seen that footage will agree how shocking it was. And I think it's just disgraceful that you can be, really look at somebody like Chris Whitty, the amount of public service he's given to this country since March last year, and indeed before that, obviously, as the government's chief medical officer, must have been working all hours. I've spoken to some of the scientists involved with SAGE, for example, and they have increasingly over the last year come under personal attack, for example, on social media in a way that they just would never have done before the pandemic, targeted by people who disagree with what the government's doing, who are, spreading anti-vax conspiracy theories. And I think the stuff on social media is frightening enough. Some of them have been getting threats to them and their family. But this is just, it takes it onto a whole other level. It's a physical assault. It must have been so scary for him. And it's just unbelievable that we live in a world where that can happen to you as a result of the public service you've done for this country. So I think it really does make you worry, actually, about, we see all the sort of polarised debate online about things like vaccines and the effectiveness of vaccines. People arguing very heatedly for or against lockdowns. But it's really worrying when you see, some of this stuff sort of actually kind of happen like this in the real world.
Isabel and Sonia, thank you very much for the moment, both of you. We are going to take a break, and coming up, the educational divide. Children in deprived areas are far more likely to be forced to self-isolate than children in wealthier areas. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me again, the chief leader writer at the Observer, Sonia Sodha, and the political journalist Isabel Oakeshott. Welcome back to both of you. Let's take a look at the Telegraph front page, and this is the cry to end the bubble system in schools, and they're saying that isolation, the self-isolation that schools are being forced to put students in, it's hitting the poorest pupils the hardest. Sonia.
Yeah, so I think this will be affecting a lot of parents up and down the country, actually. I know parents who are friends of mine whose kids are at school who have ended up having to self-isolate because one child in the bubble tests positive, and then the whole bubble has to self-isolate. I think the point is that we're so far into the pandemic now, and we've got quite good testing systems in place. So what experts, MPs are calling for and asking about is, can we not have better testing systems in schools to reduce the number of children having to self-isolate? Because the amount of school time that children can end up missing is huge. As this Telegraph story sets out, it's highest for children from poorer areas, we know are the children from disadvantaged backgrounds who've been most affected by the pandemic so far. We know that the education gap is getting wider. So I think this is a really good kind of, it's a good thing to be asking the government, because we know the government has been too slow to act on mitigating the impact of the pandemic on children over the last year.
Yes, and Isabella, it would obviously reduce the numbers of children being out of school. They've lost so much education as it is, and perfectly healthy children are being forced to stay at home in great numbers.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, don't get me started on this. I have been banging on about this for about a month now. I wrote about it for the Daily Mail last week. And I think it's a huge issue. You know, as a parent, I have seen the extent to which young children's education is being ridiculously and continually disrupted by these alerts when a pupil or a teacher or somebody connected to the school supposedly tests positive. Usually almost always they're asymptomatic, and then dozens of children are sent home, and it is absolutely awful. It's awful for children, it's awful for working parents, and by and large it is completely unnecessary. The figures on this are extraordinary. 385,000 children are not at school because of these alerts, and the vast majority of those children are totally healthy. So this is a nonsense. It has to stop. I have no idea why it has taken anybody so long to wake up to the fact that this is such a pressing issue. And I really hope that the government changes the guidance to schools, because at the moment schools have a pretty limited room for manoeuvre. They really have to follow, even though it's called guidance, it's pretty much an instruction from Public Health England to follow these procedures. So it must be changed.
Yes, we will keep an eye on that one, certainly, as will all the parents and children involved. Very quickly to the Metro, and this is another idea for dealing with and living with COVID. Business bosses to get quarantine exemption if they can show that they will have significant economic benefit to the UK. A good idea, Sonia?
I think it's a tricky idea, actually. And, you know, we've gone from this story about schools and whole bubbles being sent home, possibly not making the best use of the testing we've got available. And then we've got this story about senior business executives being able to leave their quarantine, leave self-isolation for business activity. I think, first of all, it sends the wrong message. We have these measures because they're important from a health perspective. And I think if you allow some people to break them, but not others, that says to people, well, maybe you don't need to stick by them anyway. I also think, and, you know, lots of small businesses have protested about this, you know, why should it only be senior business executives? And the government has sort of proposed this test, which is, you know, 50% more likely chance of creating 500 jobs in the UK. How on earth are they going to test that? It sort of seems like the thing that is going to be used as a get around by business people coming into the country. You know, they'll just sort of be able to make it up on a form. And it does have a ring of one rule for them, another rule for us sort of vibe about it.
Yeah, I can see how you would say that. Isabel, we'll talk a bit more about this a little later on. For the moment, thank you both, Sonia and Isabel.